Friends, sci-fi, you want to watch super hit movie The Equalizer 3 in English, then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, West Films Friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called The Equalizer 3. I'm also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. This video is produced by West Films. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star-cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will give you a small review of the story of this film. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. The Equalizer 3 is a 2023 American vigilant action thriller film directed by Antoine Fuqua. It is a sequel to The Equalizer 2 and the third and final installment of the Equalizer trilogy based on the television series of the same name. The film stars Denzel Washington, reprising his role as retired U.S. Marine and DIA officer Robert McCall, with Dakota Fanning, Eugenio Mastrandrea, David Denman, Gaia Scodelario, and Remo Girone in supporting roles. In the film, McCall discovers that his new friends in a small town in South Italy are intimidated by Camorra members, where he sets out to save them from the threat. Talks over a third entry to the franchise began following the second film's release on August 2, 2018. Following a long delay due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the project was officially announced in January 2022. Filming began on October 10, 2022, in Italy on the Amalfi Coast, and continued in the region until November 20th, after which it moved to Naples in early December, before wrapping production in Rome by January 2023. Robert Richardson served as director of photography on the film, after previously working with Fuqua on Emancipation 2022. The Equalizer 3 was released in the United States on September 1, 2023 by Sony Pictures Releasing. The film received generally positive reviews from critics. A fourth and fifth film are in development. Plot: at a secluded winery in Sicily, Robert McCall kills a gangster, Lorenzo Vitale, and his henchmen to obtain a key to the winery's vault and recoup money stolen in a cyber heist. While leaving the winery, Vitale's grandson shoots Robert in the back. Robert attempts suicide due to his injury, but finds his gun out of bullets, and then takes the ferry back to the mainland. While driving on the Amalfi Coast, Robert pulls over and slips into a state of unconsciousness from shock. Gio Bonucci, a local carabiniere, finds and rescues him. Gio brings Robert to a remote coastal Italian town called Altamonte, where a small-town doctor, Enzo Aricio, treats him. As he recovers, Robert becomes acquainted with the locals and grows fond of the village and its people. Robert makes an anonymous phone call to CIA officer Emma Collins to tip her off about the winery's role in the illegal drug trade disguised as ordinary business transactions in Sicily. Collins and other CIA operatives arrive at the winery and find millions in cash as well as bags of phenethyline tablets hidden in a storeroom, confirming Robert's suspicions. Meanwhile, members of the Camorra harass and kill villagers in an attempt to coerce them out of their housing and take over Altamonte for commercialization purposes. Robert overhears Marco Quaranta, a high-ranking Camorra member, pressuring local store owner Angelo for payments. To make an example of him, the Camorra firebombs Angelo's fish store as the entire town watches. Gio reviews the video of the firebombing and calls the Italian Central Police for an inquiry. Along with his wife and daughter, the Camorra attack Gio and beat him for interfering in their operations. Following that, Marco demands that Gio set up a boat for him. Overhearing the conversation, Robert asks Marco to move his operations to a different location. When Marco refuses, Robert kills him and his henchmen. Vincent, Marco's older brother and head of the Camorra, threatens and tortures the Naples head of police and instructs him to find the person responsible for Marco's death. Vincent has Collins' car rigged with a bomb, but she survives after Robert warns her. Vincent threatens to shoot Gio in front of the whole town, only for Robert to reveal himself. The citizens begin to record Vincent and his henchmen on their camera phones, causing Vincent and his gang to retreat and return to his home. They then prepare to retaliate the following day. Later that night, Robert infiltrates Vincent's home, kills his bodyguards one by one, and forces Vincent to take a lethal dose of his own drugs. Through Collins, Robert returns the money he had taken from the winery to an elderly couple's pension fund. Back in Langley, Virginia, Collins receives a promotion for her contribution to ending the Altamani drug trade. She gets a package containing a book of contacts and a note from Robert congratulating her and stating that her mother would be proud of her. Thus, the note reveals Collins is the daughter of Robert's late friend and colleague, Susan Plummer. With the Quaranta brothers dead, Robert celebrates with the locals after their football team's victory. Cast: Denzel Washington as Robert McCall, Dakota Fanning as Emma Collins, Eugenio Mastrandrea as Gio Bonucci, David Denman as Frank Conroy, Gaia Scodelario as Amina, Remo Girone as Enzo Aricio, Andrea Scarduzio as Vincent Quaranta, Andrea Dodero as Marco Quaranta, Daniele Peroni as Angelo, Dea Lanzaro as Gabriella Bonucci, Sonia Benamar as Chiara Bonucci, Bruno Bellata as Lorenzo Vitale, Adolfo Margiotta as Chief Barella, Naples Chief of Police, Salvatore Rocco as Vincent's man, Alessandro Pes as Viking. Production. In August 2018, Antoine Fuqua announced his plans to continue the film series. The filmmaker expressed interest in the plot taking place in an international setting. In January 2022, a third film was officially confirmed to be in development, with Denzel Washington returning in the titular role. Washington was paid $20 million for his involvement. In June 2022, Dakota Fanning was announced to have been cast as well, partnering with Washington 19 years after Man on Fire, 2004. By November 2022, Sonia Benamar, Andrea Dodero, Remo Girone, Eugenio Mastrandrea, Daniele Perone, Andrea Scarduzio, and Gaia Scodelario were added to the cast. Production designer Naomi Shohan spent a month in Italy scouting locations before selecting the village of Atrani as the main setting for the film. Principal photography began on October 10, 2022, on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. Filming continued in the region until November 20th, after which it moved to Naples in early December, before wrapping production by January 2023 in Rome. Fuqua once again served as director, with Washington announcing that it would be his next movie. Robert Richardson serves as director of photography on the project, after previously working with Fuqua on Emancipation. Music. In May 2023, Marcelo Zarvos was brought in to score the film's music after previously collaborating with Fuqua in Brooklyn's Finest 2009, What's My Name, Muhammad Ali 2019, The Guilty 2021, and Emancipation 2022. He replaced Harry Gregson Williams, who scored the previous installments in the trilogy as well as Fuqua's The Replacement Killers and Infinite. Love, Disorderly by Thomas Azier was added as a soundtrack to the film. Release. The Equalizer 3 was released by Sony Pictures, releasing on September 1st, 2023 in both conventional formats and IMAX. It received a release on premium video on demand formats on October 3, 2023. Reception. Box office. The Equalizer 3 has grossed $92.4 million in the United States and Canada and $98.7 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $191.1 million. In the United States and Canada, The Equalizer 3 was projected to gross $28 to $30 million from 3,965 theaters in its opening weekend and a total of $33-40 million over the 4-day Labor Day frame. The film made $13.1 million on its first day, including $3.8 million from Thursday night previews, up from the totals of the first $1.5 million and second $3.1 million films. It went on to debut to $34.6 million and a total of $42.8 million over the 4 days, topping the box office and marking the second best Labor Day weekend of all time after Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings 2021. In its second weekend, the film fell 65% to $12 million, finishing second behind newcomer The Nun 2. Its biggest territories outside the United States and Canada were the United Kingdom, $10.2 million, Germany, $8.4 million, Australia, $7 million, and France, $6.7 million. Critical response? On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 76% of 167 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.310. The website's consensus reads, "Another entertaining outing from Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington, The Equalizer 3 mostly makes up for its formulaic story with generous helpings of cathartic action." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 58 out of 100, based on 38 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, same as the previous installment, while those polled at PostTrack gave it a 90% overall positive score, with 72% saying they would definitely recommend the film. The Independent's Clarice Luffrey gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, writing, "At its best, and The Equalizer 3 is about as good as the first film, it neatly counterbalances Fuqua's Baroque blood-and-guts action with Washington's ability to command attention while sitting perfectly still." The Sunday Times' Tom Schoen also gave it 3 out of 5 stars, writing, "Whether enjoying a cappuccino, flirting with a waitress, or snapping men's forearms, Washington makes it all seem like a movie star enjoying a midlife Dolce Vita moment." Kyle Smith of the Wall Street Journal wrote, "For those who can tolerate extreme violence, The Equalizer 3 is diverting enough. If the script is so-so, the beautiful Italian locations, Mr. Washington's still world-class charm, and an eerie, frightening musical score by Marcelo Zarvos lift it." Accolades. The film was nominated at the Saturn Award for Best Action or Adventure Film, while Fuqua was nominated for Outstanding Directing in a Motion Picture, and Washington for Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture at the 55th NAACP Image Awards. Future. In August 2023, Fuqua stated that there have been discussions to develop a prequel movie detailing the origins of Robert McCall. The filmmaker stated that using de-aging technology to make Washington appear younger is an option, while he would also consider casting John David Washington or Michael B. Jordan in the role. Later that month, Antoine Fuqua stated that while The Equalizer 3 was talked about internally as the final film in the franchise, he would be interested in returning as director for a future installment if Denzel Washington was interested in returning to the role. In November 2024, Washington announced they are making The Equalizer 4 and The Equalizer 5. The Equalizer 3 review. The mysterious vigilante Robert McCall, Denzel Washington, returns to exact yet more extravagantly bloody vengeance on an assortment of deserving bad guys. This time, for tenuous reasons that are not made clear until the end of the film, he finds himself in Italy. Specifically a small town on the coast of Sicily full of smiling, thoroughly decent townsfolk, plus a gang of firebomb-happy mafia thugs. Eyeing the town as a potential location for his much-postponed retirement, McCall delves into his unique skill set and seemingly inexhaustible weapon stash to deal with the Camorra, while CIA agent Collins Dakota Fanning is on hand to tie up the loose ends. With Antoine Fuqua once again in the director's chair, and a violence-heralding musical motif on the score that sounds like an electric guitar being butchered, it's very much business as usual in the third installment of the Equalizer franchise, one that includes rigidly black and white moral delineations, decapitations, and eye socket trauma. But while there are no surprises here, there are visceral kicks to be found in the business-like efficiency of McCall's retribution and the devilish glint in Washington's eye as he delivers it. In Sicily, an Italian drug lord and his child pull up in a jeep to a secluded villa. Strewn across the rustic courtyard, which on better days would be an ideal vacation spot, are the bloody, dismembered bodies of a goon army. The man exits the jeep with a pistol, leaving the kid in the vehicle. He and one of his henchmen enter the home, where they discover more carcasses, whose causes of death, riddled with bullets, their faces cleaved by a butcher's knife, grow increasingly gruesome. Noted hitman turned ghost Robert McCall, Denzel Washington, sits beneath 2 gunmen. Is McCall the prisoner, or are they? He, of course, dispatches them with ease, grabbing a set of keys from the dead drug lord's body that hold what McCall came to retrieve. You won't guess what mundane package McCall has just murdered an army of killers to get, but it doesn't really matter. While the ham-fisted MacGuffin doesn't serve the rest of the film, this opening scene, from its stomach-churning violence to the reliance on impractical effects, indicates where this once enjoyable nuts-and-bolts action franchise has gone wrong. Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer 3 is not just what many assume will be the last film in the franchise, it's the 5th overall collaboration between the director and Washington. Their partnership, on its face, is puzzling. Sure, their first teaming Training Day netted Washington his lone Best Actor win, but their successive films have only gotten harsher and dumber since that triumph. What exactly does Washington get out of these films? It's a relationship that often recalls the run Anthony Mann and Jimmy Stewart experienced in their 8 pictures together. Though, to be sure, Fuqua Washington has mined far poorer thematic treasures when Stewart left his prestige perch, his good guy image, and aw-shucks mannerisms to explore darker stories in Mann's freeing westerns. You can tell Washington gets the same pleasure here, not caring if the audience experiences the same adventurous sensations he does. Because, make no mistake, The Equalizer 3 is hot garbage. It's also a fascinating but failed attempt by Fuqua and Washington to make their own Mann-Stewart film. Consider how the Western genre stains this picture. During McCall's raid on the villa, he is critically wounded and eventually discovered by a local cop, Gio, Eugenio Mastrandrea, who takes him to a quaint seaside Italian village where a local doctor named Enzo, Remo Girone, treats the hitman's wounds. While recuperating in the restful town, McCall learns to love the people and the peace they provide him. Though a local young gang leader, Marco, Andrea Dodero, looms over them, McCall, who says he's merely passing through, would rather avoid intervening. Like any Western, when push comes to shove, McCall will defend them while teaching these acquiescing people how to stand up to their oppressors. Fuqua and cinematographer Robert Richardson, Platoon, and A Few Good Men provide further Western details through chiaroscuro lighting. Washington's silhouette spells danger, while his weary frame expresses a close relationship to death. Richardson also captures the actor from extreme low angles, a la John Ford, painting heroic compositions. The problem, however, is they've made McCall so vicious we're not quite sure if we should be rooting for him to kill. While it makes sense for the character to show greater brutality, after all, in the first Equalizer, he was once a calm man idling in retirement. Now he's a man fully bathed in blood and guts again. Even Washington can't fully pull across that through line, especially when the script is so weak. Take the primary subplot, which sees Dakota Fanning reteaming with Washington. The two previously starred in Man on Fire, this time as CIA agent Emma Collins. McCall phones a tip to Collins' desk that'll change her career. The information nonsensically takes her from working a call center to field work. Her arc, nevertheless, is flat-out bad. She never proves herself to be a capable agent, and her case, involving an Italian drug ring, barely connects to McCall's stay in the village. Fanning appears overmatched in the few scenes the pair occupy together as she unsuccessfully attempts to channel Jessica Chastain's turn in Zero Dark 30. I wish I could say the action fares better, but the staging lacks imagination. The editing doesn't snap, the score sounds rote, the film would rather go gory and gruesome to paper over its limp choreography than craft anything bordering on memorable. The film's only saving grace is how much fun Washington appears to be having. He makes some surprising decisions that initially feel like outtakes because of how random they are. Is he still playing McCall as the grieving widower, or does he want to push this character further toward a psychopathic territory? It's become old hat and kind of lazy to compare every contemporary action film to John Wick, but this franchise, which launched the same year as the first John Wick, struggles to evolve like Keanu Reeves' films did. This trilogy has no emotional core, no narrative continuum, no pleasure with the genre it calls home. Instead, in its successive offerings, the Equalizer franchise is tragically uneven. If an actor's career can be said to obey the same laws that govern physics, Then Denzel Washington's turn in the third big-screen Equalizer reboot, the Threequalizer, represents the corresponding opposite reaction to his last role as the Lord Macbeth for Joel Coen. Washington brought a frailty and introspection to the Thane of Cawdor, played as a graying lion runt with insecurities giving way to a corrosive bloodlust. As Robert McCall, the erstwhile Marine and intelligence agency ghost cleaning up the streets in his retirement, Washington gets the chance to refute the idea that the savage passage of years must eat away at a man. Yoked with that same weight of pre-geriatric regret, he's now able to conquer it and win at life, his willingness to kill making him a hero rather than tragic figure. With a superhuman physical fitness, allowing him to dominate toughs a third of his age, a tactical acumen creating the illusion that he knows everything at all times, and a teasy little rapport with the decades-younger waitress at his favorite cafe, he projects the picture of capability. Age is just a number, in this case dwarfed by his body count. As McCall spends a few scenes hobbling about with a cane following an injury sustained in the field, the anxiety of getting old nips at this movie's heels, but its pipe dream of overpowered obsolescence responds with AK-47 fire. Director Antoine Fuqua wants a little bit of that Shakespearean gravitas from Washington, who evinces a clear understanding of his rudimentary character. He does bad things for good reasons, meting out punishment only to those who deserve it and feeling duly guilty for his dirty work afterward. McCall has a conflicted relationship to violence, but his film does not. The big distinguishing factor in the final piece of a profitable trilogy, its margins firmed up with generous product placement for American luxury car brands inexplicably driven by Italians, is a hysterical hunger for carnage in turns fun and sickening, just a notch or two away from the high standard set by Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning. Fuqua and cinematographer Robert Richardson go out of their way to show us the wanton gore, often modulating a shot so that the camera can get the most unobstructed view of ruptured arteries or knives sticking out of faces. In one moment, suggesting a superior cut willing to go all in on mutilation, McCall gouges an enemy's eyeball out, jams a gun barrel in the hole, and shoots another assailant through the skull. Don't worry, it's fine. They're all mafia. McCall lands in a postcard-quality seaside town by the Sicilian shore after an assignment gone belly up and takes it upon himself to purge the area of the organized criminals, forcing everyone out to make room for developers. He finds this charming hamlet worth fighting for, with its simple, pure-hearted residents seemingly plucked from the rose-hued romanticism of Cinema Paradiso. It's an unmistakably American vision of Italian country life, all flattering hat salesmen and convivial fishmongers and religious paraders. The scenic 1,000-year-old church sitting atop a hill, the climb to which becomes a lumbering metaphor for perseverance and progress, also introduces the Catholic iconography that will be leaned on in a climax posturing toward contemplation of sin. Ultimately, the film adopts a well, what are you going to do position on the matter. McCall gives and gets a hand from a CIA rookie, Dakota Fanning, her chemistry with Washington not so changed since Man on Fire in 2004, who asks how he pegged her for an operative while dressed exactly like Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30. The script contains a lot of boneheadedness along those lines, only some of it amusing. One can't help but smack their gums as a target of La Cosa Nostra says into her phone that she'll call right back as soon as she gets into her car. But talk of anonymous Middle Eastern terrorists peddling a jihad drug amphetamine leaves a sourer taste and hints at the deeper vein of conservatism constant in a series about enforcing order by any means necessary. For all McCall's brutality, his old-fashioned values of neatness and politeness always triumph over the improprieties of the younger generations, humbled by a schooling at the garrote-wielding hands of their elder. When he takes a break from glowering, Washington appears to be having a good time with the occasional wisecrack, as well he should. His Sony-subsidized European vacation doubles as good PR, framing him as a movie star at the top of his game even as he wades through a forgettable potboiler. Like McCall, he knows his tools, an arsenal not of guns and blades, but of withering stares and crumpled smiles. It's almost enough to outshine everything else. Just who is the Equalizer? Despite a hit TV show in the 1980s and another with Queen Latifah still running, that title has become synonymous with Denzel Washington, who returns as government assassin turned vigilante Robert McCall. Billed as the final chapter in a trilogy, The Equalizer 3 sees McCall finding community in a picturesque part of Italy and being forced to protect its people from the mafia. The film also reteams Washington with director Antoine Fuqua for the fifth time, following Training Day, The Magnificent Seven, and the two previous installments, and their comfort with one another ensures a seamless action movie that might not attract new fans, but should play well to those already fond of this franchise. Fuqua throws the audience directly into the action. The camera follows a man as he walks through an Italian vineyard strewn with bodies, knives, and bullet wounds jutting out of them. McCall must be close by, a point reinforced by Marcelo Zarvos's quietly alarming score. Though McCall manages to eliminate nearly all of his enemies once again, he does get hurt, saved by a kind policeman, Eugenio Mastrandrea, who takes him to a small-town doctor instead of a hospital. As McCall recuperates, he makes connections with the locals. A flirty cafe owner, a fish seller who won't let him pay, even a priest. Before long, he begins to relax and think of this place and people as his community. However, his trained spy eyes notice what's lurking beneath this friendly surface, namely that the mafia has a hold on these lovely people, controlling them with threats and extortion. The vigilante in him wakes up, and he proceeds to protect his new friends. There's more to the mafia backstory that involves an international conspiracy of drug money financing terrorists, so McCall enlists the help of a young CIA operative, Dakota Fanning. Despite these complications, the script, by returning screenwriter Richard Wenk, keeps things simple enough and repeats the plot revelations to make it easier on the audience. It's always clear who the bad guys are, men who are just as violent as McCall. Additionally, the screenplay manages to convey how McCall charms the townspeople without becoming cloying or overtly earnest. Washington holds the screen like the popular star he is. It's hard not to root for his characters. Even at the all-media screening, there was cheering when he taunted one of his enemies and when the bad guys got what they deserve. Beyond the righteous action and visceral violence, it's Washington's swagger and charisma that compels. His face and voice, his distinctive walk, his trademark gestures, the smirk and pursed lips before he takes action, are so recognizable and familiar that this journey through Italy feels like a visit with a benevolent but ruthless friend. This time, he even gets to speak Italian and show a different side of McCall. True to formula, the movie gives him a chance to mentor a younger person. This time, it's Fanning's spy. Their scenes together have a familial undertone, even if they are supposed to be strangers. The actors have worked together before in 2004's Man on Fire, and Fanning brings out Washington's humorous side, as their time together becomes a short respite from the fury elsewhere. Like its two predecessors, The Equalizer 3 demands a strong stomach. There's violence aplenty, loud bullets, body impalement, and maiming. Some of it is cruel, but draped in a veil of good intention so earnest its purpose is never questioned. There's even a well-staged Spartacus moment in the town square where everybody comes together to support McCall, making it easy to accept, even applaud, when the bad guys are sadistically dispatched. Fuqua orchestrates the action with propulsive style. Some of the visual motifs might be obvious, blood running into red wine, but it works. Collaborating with DP Robert Richardson, he takes advantage of the Italian setting to give the film a spacious feel. The creative team knows their ace in Washington, showing him off in dark and shadowy compositions, as if he were an avenging angel from the heavens. Zarvos's music has two modes, threateningly ominous or loudly throbbing. It's all very effective, like so much of the film, delivering exactly what's expected, no more and no less. Washington tends to alternate between action movies and prestige Oscar projects. While this film and others like it might not win him awards or critical raves, they remain watchable and entertaining, aided in no small part by the directors in charge. Both Fuqua and the late Tony Scott, with whom Washington also made 5 films, are able to deliver well-made adrenaline jolts. and Washington never phones it in. He's always immensely present, knowing what his audience wants and giving it to them in true movie star fashion. Plot: Robert McCall finds himself at home in southern Italy, but he discovers his friends are under the control of local crime bosses. As events turn deadly, McCall knows what he has to do: become his friend's protector by taking on the mafia. I go into some minor spoilers here, so if you don't want to know anything about the story, then you'd best not read any further. It's been a long 5 years since Denzel last graced our screens as the Angel of Vengeance Robert McCall in The Equalizer 2, so I've been looking forward to this belated third and final entry in the franchise. Director Antoine Fuqua also returns, bringing his gritty visual style while keeping everything coherent, and this might well be the most violent movie in the franchise. It wastes no time getting going as we are introduced to Robert doing what he does, but within the first few minutes he shoots a guy through the eye, then shoots through the hole in his head to hit other bad guys. Now this is cinema. Robert is injured and needs time to heal and is taken in by a kindly doctor in Italy. He slowly begins to find peace with the small town and its people. However, it doesn't take long for evil to come along, and Robert has to use his particular set of skills once again. The story is generic stuff with one-dimensional villains, but they are so despicable that you can't wait for them to get what they deserve. Robert can't sit idly by and watch them terrorize the locals, so he helps out a CIA agent, played by his man-on-fire co-star Dakota Fanning, to bring down their operation once and for all. This almost feels like a horror movie in places, as it really gets quite graphic, but it's also profoundly satisfying, as Robert loves to punish bullies, which is exactly what the villains are here. They deserve everything they get, and worse, so you're cheering him on every step of the way. In terms of action, we get a couple of explosions, shootings, stabbings, and a brief fight scene, but these movies were never really about fight scenes, but Robert using his wits to take down his opponents. I love how he is always one step ahead of them, making him an almost invincible badass. At an hour and 49 minutes, the film moves along well, getting intense at some points, and then it slows down to establish the characters. It could maybe have trimmed a few minutes here and there, but it's certainly never dull, and has a surprisingly rousing ending, which will have you smiling. Overall, The Equalizer 3 is a brutally satisfying end to the trilogy, with Denzel at his best and some graphic moments of extreme violence. No complaints here. The villains are forgettable, but still nasty enough to make you want to see them get their much-deserved comeuppance. The Equalizer 3 reviews are in, and they appear to be mixed. Directed once again by Antoine Fuqua, the third and final installment in the Equalizer trilogy finds Denzel Washington's vigilante Robert McCall retiring to southern Italy, where he must later face off against the Cilician Mafia to protect his friends. The Equalizer 3 cast reunites Washington with his man-on-fire co-star Dakota Fanning, and also includes David Denman, Sonia Amar, and Remo Gueron in supporting roles. Today, ahead of the Equalizer 3 release date on September 1st, critics started sharing their reviews for the threequel. The consensus calls it another showcase of Denzel Washington's star power and Antoine Fuqua's slick action, though critics are divided on other aspects of the film. Some are calling the end to the action trilogy a fitting send-off, though others call the ending uneven. See a sampling of the reviews below. Loosely based on the 1980s TV series of the same name, The Equalizer was released in 2014 and introduced Washington as the retired U.S. Marine and DIA officer who reluctantly returns to action as a vigilante. The Equalizer was far from a perfect film with a 60% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, though critics praised its stylish violence, even though its attempts at making an emotional impact fell flat. These generally positive reviews, combined with its box office gross, were enough to launch an unlikely trilogy. The Equalizer 2, released 4 years later in 2018, was widely deemed a decline in quality from the first film. While the sequel delivered the standard visceral action expected from a vigilante thriller, critics expected more from the talented duo of Washington and Fuqua, who have also collaborated on Training Day and The Magnificent Seven. Ultimately, The Equalizer 2 was deemed a disappointing example of diminishing returns, though its commercial success led to the threequel. Based on the Equalizer 3 reviews, it appears the trilogy has avoided another drastic drop in quality between installments. However, it's not unlike the first two films in that Washington's performance and the action sequences are receiving praise, while other aspects are being criticized. This time around, critics are divided on whether The Equalizer 3 is a satisfying end to the trilogy, with Emily Garbutt of Games Radar calling it not quite a bang, not quite a whimper, but something in between. There's a good argument to be made that Denzel Washington is the greatest actor working in the industry today. He's a two-time Oscar winner, renowned by almost all, can perform in any genre, and you would be hard-pressed to find someone on this planet who doesn't like at least one of his performances. While his dramatic work in films such as Fences, Training Day, Malcolm X, and Glory are incredible feats of acting all by themselves, he's also one of the most badass action stars in the business. There are films like Man on Fire to Unstoppable, as well as the highly underrated The Magnificent Seven reboot. But the first two The Equalizer films are the ones that stand out the most amidst his pure action-driven roles. This might sound sacrilegious to some, but Antoine Fuqua and Washington are one of the most effective director-actor duos out there. Washington has always brought out the best in Fuqua, and of course, Fuqua directed The Thespian to his second Oscar win. For the longest time, Washington was on the very small list of movie stars who had never done a sequel. Then along came The Equalizer in 2014, an action thriller loosely based on the 80s television series of the same name. The film became a smash hit at the box office, and while critics were a bit more lukewarm on the film, audiences ate up every minute of it. In 2018, The Equalizer 2 debuted in theaters and was another hit. 5 years later, Fuqua and Washington are teaming up once again for the third and apparently final chapter in the hit franchise, The Equalizer 3. Set some time after the events of the second film, The Equalizer 3 opens with a Cilician mobster entering his base of operations to find that almost all of his men have been brutally murdered. It's not long until he comes face to face with Robert McCall, Washington, in an encounter that leaves our protagonist gravely wounded. McCall is soon rescued by Enzo Arrizio, Remo Girone, a doctor in a small town on the shores of southern Italy. McCall quickly becomes comfortable in Italy, forming close friendships with Enzo and many of the locals, but soon discovers that his new home is under the control of the Cilician Mafia. With limited options, he must once again take matters into his own hands by going to war against his dangerous new adversaries. If you've seen the prior Equalizer films, you should know exactly what you're getting into with the latest installment. It follows a similar formula as the previous films, while trading in the suburbs of Boston for a European setting. For the most part, this works. The new location puts Washington's character in unfamiliar territory where he doesn't know everybody by name or have the help of his late friend Susan, Melissa Leo. The film hints that Emma, Dakota Fanning, a young CIA analyst, will play a major role in aiding McCall's latest gratuitous path of revenge, but for the majority of the film's runtime, her subplot never takes off. Outside a reveal that comes at the film's third act, Fanning's role feels mostly forgettable. But that isn't why you're coming to see this sequel. Fuqua and screenwriter Richard Wenk are completely aware that the audience is showing up to see Washington inflict almost cartoonish levels of pain against any mobster who stands in his way. And that's what you get. While there is a 15-minute stretch in the film's second act where the titular vigilante is nearly absent, every other minute of the film is time well spent. Washington may not be as young as some of the modern-day action stars like Chris Hemsworth or Michael B. Jordan, but he's still extremely believable in this action-heavy role. He's intimidating, fierce, and dangerous, but also extremely charismatic and lovable. Sure, the movie shows him doing things to the human body that many would presume to be impossible, But at the same time, he's the kind of character you'd be more than happy to sit at an Italian bakery and have some tea with. Between all the violence, the film has several scenes showing Washington doing just that, and yet it never manages to bore you. If the Equalizer films were to star any other actor other than Washington, we probably wouldn't have ever gotten a third movie, or even a second movie for that matter. Much like the first two films, The Equalizer 3 works because of Washington's total commitment to this role. While the latest Equalizer film may not live up to the previous two installments, it still comes pretty close. The story is nearly non-existent for much of the runtime, but it does make up for that by having some of the trilogy's most gory sequences to date. The violence is almost on the level of a Saw movie, and the amount of tonal whiplash between scenes of Washington buying fish at the local market to dismembering bad guys isn't going to convert anybody who wasn't big on the previous installments. Fuqua has always been great at directing the ultimate dad movies, and the first two Equalizer films have always had a special spot in the Dad Movie Hall of Fame. The pacing is brisk without once overstaying its welcome. It has an ultra-charismatic lead, plus boasts all the violence, chaos, and melodrama one could want out of this particular movie. 2023 has brought audiences some technically marvelous and innovative action movies, such as the latest installments in the John Wick and Mission Impossible franchises, and while The Equalizer 3 may not live up to the high heights set by those films, it still delivers on having plenty of satisfying action of its own. What more could you possibly ask for? The Equalizer 3's ending closed on an interesting note for Denzel Washington's McCall, which appears to be the final chapter for his take on the character. The third Equalizer opens with former DIA officer Robert McCall being wounded after wiping out a Sicilian mob base. He's soon taken in by the locals at a seaside village called Altamonte, who come to treat him as one of their own while he recovers. Unfortunately, the village locals are being threatened by mafia outfit the Camorra. After they push the violence too far, McCall is forced to push back with equal effect. A subplot also sees McCall aiding CIA agent Emma Collins, Dakota Fanning, giving her information about designer drugs that were being shipped from the mob base he raided. It turns out the Camorra themselves are in league with terrorists, and after McCall kills the brother of Mafia Chief Vincent, Andrea Scarduccio, the two men are set for a final showdown. In the end, McCall kills Vincent and his men in a violent home invasion. An injured Collins gets a promotion, and McCall appears to have finally found peace as he decides to stay in the village. Denzel Washington's character is put in harm's way throughout the entire action movie, but Robert McCall does not die in The Equalizer 3 by the time the credits roll. The movie initially looks like this could be a possibility by having him be shot in the back after the opening sequence, which leaves his health in a critical state. It is only after being operated on by a local that McCall proves to be stable. The film ultimately elects to leave Washington's hero alive to give him a happy ending, or leave the door open for a sequel instead of counting him among everyone who dies in The Equalizer 3. A big theme of The Equalizer 3 is the idea that people end up where they're supposed to be, and by the end of the third entry, McCall appears to have found where he belongs. The sequel presents a darker take on the character, who is seemingly still reeling from the death of best friend Susan, Melissa Leo, during the second film and his betrayal by former colleagues. McCall is more sadistic and brutal in the way he dispatches foes, and seems intent on inflicting pain first. However, he finds his humanity once again when the village takes him in and treats him with kindness. After killing Vincent, he heads back to Altamonte and is last seen beaming as he takes part in a village celebration. Having just gifted his black book to Collins, it appears McCall has truly given up the vigilante life. The Equalizer 3's ending gives no hint of a further sequel, and if it truly is the last installment, it's a nice note to leave the character on. The opening of the threequel feels like something of a slasher film, as a mob boss comes home to his vineyard and discovers the bodies of his men littering his home. His remaining henchmen confront McCall in a cellar, but of course the latter easily comes out on top and kills them all. Before this, McCall hints the reason he's there is because they took something that didn't belong to them, and afterward he's seen with a mystery backpack. It's only in the final scenes that he reveals to Collins what's inside. McCall explains that this mob stronghold also took part in cybercrime, and that they stole the pension of a retired man in Boston. McCall gave the pension guy, Greg Dyer, a ride in a lift one time, a nod to his Equalizer 2 side gig, and he came to Italy with the sole intent of giving the man his $360,000 back. Collins doesn't understand why McCall would go to such lengths to help a total stranger. But when she later hands over the bag and watches the joy the recovered money brings to the man and his wife, she gets it. The Equalizer 3 doesn't give much depth to its antagonists, who are depicted as almost cartoonish evil. Their various crimes include hanging an old man from a window and later cutting off the hand of a subordinate. They collect protection money from many of the stores in Altamonte, but Vincent has larger plans in mind for this little paradise. He wants to build resorts and casinos for tourists, and that will involve pushing the population out. Given the kindness with which he's been treated by the people, McCall makes it clear that isn't going to happen. Another major subplot in Equalizer 3 involves Collins looking into shipments of drugs that were being sent from inside wine bottles at the vineyard McCall raided. This is an amphetamine dubbed the jihad drug, which is being sold by Syrian terrorists to fund their activities. Of course, it turns out the Camorra is buying the drug and thus directly funding terrorism, which is why another lingering mystery running throughout the film is why McCall is helping a random CIA agent. He and Collins form a nice bond, but he always avoids answering why he contacted her. The final scene in Collins' office, following her recovery from a car bomb planted by the Camorra that nearly killed her, answers this question. She finds that McCall has gifted her his black book with a message stating her mother would be proud. Collins then looks at a graduation picture on her desk, revealing she's the daughter of McCall's old friends Susan and Brian, Bill Pullman. In acting as something of a mentor to Collins and then imparting his little book of names and secrets, he's setting her on a path toward becoming a great agent like Susan was. It's another sign that McCall himself is ready to hang up his equalizing ways and retire too. Call gets the CIA involved. McCall gives Vincent a taste of his own medicine in the ending and forces him a fatal dose of these pills. He then walks with the fleeing Camorra chief into the village and waits until he dies from his overdose. The third film in the Equalizer series is being tipped as the final outing for both Washington and Fuqua. Denzel Washington said that the Equalizer 4 could happen, but it would have to be without him. But while the actor has indicated that a fourth movie with a new actor is on the table, Fuqua's comments indicate otherwise. According to the director, Fuqua is open to directing the Equalizer 4, but he too will walk away from the franchise if Washington isn't on board. With Fuqua's return to the director's chair being dependent on Washington's return, a fourth installment is looking increasingly unlikely. Director Antoine Fuqua previously entertained the notion of Equalizer 4 could feature a digitally de-aged McCall, even star Denzel's son, John David. The former option seems to have been ruled out by Washington, and the latter scenario, while technically possible, probably won't occur either unless Fuqua changes his mind. In the event that Washington and Fuqua do re-team for a fourth film, it would be relatively easy for the story to continue. While some theorize that the third outing would see McCall himself die, this isn't the case. Instead, the sequel ends with McCall finding some inner peace. The Equalizer 3 very much serves as an ending, but it doesn't negate a fourth entry at all. Another sequel could simply pick up with McCall on another mission of vengeance and simply explain that retirement didn't suit him. Now that Collins has been established as his new ally, she could also come to him for help on an operation that needs his unconventional methods. Of course, heading in this direction could risk the Equalizer 4 having to repeat the Equalizer 3's ending by retiring McCall yet again. Cast Denzel Washington as Robert McCall, Dakota Fanning as Emma Collins, Eugenio Master. Andrea as Gio Bonucci David, Denman as Frank Conroy, Gaia Scutilo as Amina Remo Girones, Enzo Aizio, Andrea Scarduzio as Vincent Cora, Andrea Dodaro as Marco Corrent, Danielle Peronius, Angelo Dier, Lanzaro Anzaro as Gabriella Bonucci, Sonia Ben Omaris, Bruno Bilada as Lorenzo Vitali, Adolfo Marjoda as Chief Bella Naples, Chief of Police, Salvatore Ruacoides, Vincent Manaleandro Paces. Viking production in August 2018 as Anton Fuqua announced his plans to continue the film series. The filmmaker expressed interest in the plot taking place in international setting in January 2022. A third film was officially confirmed to be in development with Denzel Washington returning in the titular role. Washington was paid $20 million for his involvement in June 2022. Dakota Fanning was announced to have been cast as well, partnering with Washington 19 years after Man and Fire. 2004 by November 2022, Sonia Ben Omar, Andrea Dodaro, Remo Garon, Eugenio Mastandria, Danielle Perron, Andrea Scarduzio, and Gaia Scalero were added to the cast. Production designer Naomi Shan spent a month in Italy scouting locations before selecting the village of Atrani as the main setting for the film. Principal photography began on October 10th, 2022 on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. Filming continued in the region until November 20th, after which it moved to Naples in early December before wrapping production by January 2023. And Rome Fuqua once again served as director, with Washington announcing that it would be his next movie. Robert Richardson serves as director of photography on the project after previously working with Fuqua on Emancipation Music in May 2023. Marcelo Zarvas was brought in to score the film's music after previously collaborating with Fuqua in Brooklyn's Finest, 2009, What's My Name, Muhammad Ali, 2019, The Guilty, 2021, and Emancipation 2022. He replaced Harry Gregson Williams, who scored the previous installments in the trilogy, as well as Fuqua's The Replacement Killers and Infinite Love. Disorderly by Thomas Aya was added as a soundtrack to the film release. The Equalizer 3 was released by Sony Pictures, releasing on September 1st, 2023. In both conventional formats and IMAX, it received a release on premium video on demand formats on October 3rd, 2023. Reception. The Equalizer 3 has grossed $92.44 million in the United States and Canada and $98.7 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $191.1 million in the United States and Canada. The Equalizer 3 was projected to gross $28 to $30 million from 3,965 theaters in its opening weekend, and a total of $33 to $40 million over the 4-day Labor Day frame. The film made $13.1 million on its first day, including $3.8 million from Thursday night previews, up from the totals of the first $1.5 million and second $3.1 million films. It went on to debut to $34.6 million and a total of $42.88 million over the 4 days, topping the box office and marking the second best Labor Day weekend of all time after Shawnee and The Legend of the Ten Rings 2021. In its second weekend, the film fell 65% to $12 million, finishing second behind newcomer The Nun 2, its biggest territories outside the United States and Canada were the United Kingdom, $10.2 million, Germany, $8.4 million, Australia, $7 million, and France, $6.7 million. Critical response on the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes: 76% of 167 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.310. The website's consensus reads, "Another entertaining outing from Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington." The Equalizer 3 mostly makes up for its formulaic story with generous helpings of cathartic action. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 58 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, same as the E previous installment, while those pulled at PostTrack gave it a 90% overall positive score, with 72% saying they would definitely recommend the film. The independent Claire Lowry gave the film 3 out of 5 stars, writing at its best, and The Equalizer 3 is about as good as the first film. It neatly counterbalances Fuqua's Baroque blood and guts action, with Washington's ability to command attention while sitting perfectly still. The Sunday Times Is Tom Schoen also gave it 3 out of 5 stars, writing, "Whether enjoying a cappuccino, flirting with a waitress, or snapping men's forearms, Washington makes it all seem like a movie star enjoying a midlife Dolce Vita moment." Kyle Smith of the Wall Street Journal wrote, "For those who can tolerate extreme violence, The Equalizer 3 is diverting enough if the script is so. The beautiful Italian locations, Mr. Washington's still world-class charm, and an eerie, frightening musical score by Marcello Zarvoses lifted The Equalizer 3 movie review in Sicily, an Italian drug lord. And his child pull up in a jeep to a secluded villa strewn across the rustic courtyard, which on better days would be an ideal vacation spot, are the bloody, dismembered bodies of a goon army. The man exits the jeep with a pistol, leaving the kid in the vehicle. He and one of his henchmen enter the home, where they discover more carcasses whose causes of death, riddled with bullets, their faces cleaved by a butcher's knife, grow increasingly gruesome. Noted hitman turned ghost Robert McCall, Denzel Washington, sits beneath 2 gunmen. Is McCall the prisoner, or are they he of course, dispatches them with ease, grabbing a set of keys from the dead drug lord's body that hold what McCall came to retrieve. You won't guess what mundane package McCall has just murdered an army of killers to get, but it doesn't really matter, while the ham-fisted MacGuffin doesn't serve the rest of the film. This opening scene, from its stomach, turn-earning violence to the reliance on impractical effects, indicates where this once enjoyable nuts-and-bolts action franchise has gone wrong. Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer 3 is not just what many assume will be the last film in the franchise. It's the 5th overall collaboration between the director and Washington. Their partnership on its face is puzzling. Sure, their first teaming training day netted Washington his lone Best Actor win, but their successive films have only gotten harsher and dumber since that triumph. What exactly does Washington get out of these films? It's a relationship that often recalls the run Anthony Mann and Jimmy Stewart experienced in their 8 pictures. Together, though, to be sure, Fuqua Washington has mined far poorer thematic treasures when Stewart left his prestige, perch his good guy image and Ashok's mannerisms to explore darker stories in Mann's freeing westerns. You can tell adventurous sensations he does. Because, make no mistake, The Equalizer 3 is hot garbage. It's also a fascinating but failed attempt by Fuqua and Washington to make their own Mann Stewart film. Consider how the Western genre stains this picture during McCall's raid on the villa. He is critically wounded and eventually discovered by a local cop, Gio Eugenio Mastandrea, who takes him to a quaint seaside Italian village where a local doctor named Enzo Rimogon treats the hitman's wounds while recuperating. In the restful town, McCall learns to love the people and the peace they provide him, though a local young gang leader, Marco Andrea Dodo, looms over them. McCall, who says he's merely passing through, would rather avoid intervening. Like any Western, when push comes to shove, McCall will defend them while teaching these acquiescing people how to stand up to their oppressors. Fuqua and cinematographer Robert Richardson, Platoon, and A Few Good Men provide further Western details through chiaroscuro lighting. Washington's silhouette spells danger, while his wary frame expresses a close relationship to Death Richardson, also captures the actor from extreme low angles, all John Ford painting heroic compositions. The problem, however, is they've made McCall so vicious. We're not quite sure if we should be rooting for him to kill, while it makes sense for the character to show greater brutality after all. In the first Equalizer, he was once a calm man, idling in retirement now. He's a man fully bathed in blood and guts again. Even Washington can't fully pull across that through line, especially when the script is so weak. Take the primary subplot, which sees Dakota Fanning reeing with Washington. The two previously starred in Man on Fire, this time as CIA agent Emma. Collins McCall phones a tip to Collins' desk that'll change her career. The information nonsensically takes her from working a call center to fieldwork. Her arc, nevertheless, is flat out bad. She never proves herself to be a capable agent, and her case involving an Italian drug ring barely connects to McCall's stay in the village. Fanning appears overmatched in the few scenes the pair occupy together, as she unsuccessfully attempts to channel Jessica Chastain's turn in Zero Dark 30. I wish I could say the action fares better, but the staging lacks imagination. The editing doesn't snap. The score sounds wrote the film. Would rather go gory and gruesome to paper over its limp choreography than craft anything bordering on memorable. The film's only saving grace is how much fun Washington appears to be having. He makes some surprising decisions that initially feel like outtakes because of how random they are. Is he still playing McCall as the grieving widower, or does he want to push this character further toward a psychopathic territory? It's become old hat and kind of lazy to compare every contemporary action film to John Wick. But this franchise, which launched the same year as the first John Wick, struggles to evolve like Keanu Reeves' films did. This trilogy has no emotional core, no narrative continuum, no pleasure with the genre it calls home. Instead, in its successive offerings, the Equalizer franchise is tragically uneven. Just who is the Equalizer? Despite a hit TV show in the 1980s, and another with Queen Latifah still running that title, has become synonymous with Denzel Washington, who returns as government assassin turned vigilante Robert McCall. Billed as the final chapter in a trilogy, The Equalizer 3 sees McCall finding community in a picturesque part of Italy and being forced to protect its people from the mafia. The film also rees Washington with director Antoine Fuqua for the fifth time, following Training Day, The Magnificent Seven, and the two previous installments, and their comfort with one another ensures a seamless action movie that might not attract new fans, but should play well to those already fond of this franchise. Fuqua throws the audience directly into the action. The camera follows a man as he walks through an Italian vineyard strewn with bodies, knives, and bullet wounds. Jutting out of them, McCall must be close by a point reinforced by Marcello Zarvo's quietly alarming score. Though McCall manages to eliminate nearly all of his enemies, once again he does get hurt, saved by a kind policeman, Eugenio Mastandrea, who takes him to a small-town doctor instead of a hospital as McCall recuperates. He makes connections with the locals, a flirty cafe owner, a fish seller who won't let him pay, even a priest. Before long, he begins to relax and think of this place and people as his community. However, his trained spy eyes notice what's lurking beneath this friendly surface, namely that the mafia has a hold on these lovely people, controlling them with threats and extortion. The vigilante in him wakes up, and he proceeds to protect his new friends. There's more to the mafia backstory that involves an international conspiracy of drug money financing terrorists, so McCall enlists the help of a young CIA operative, Dakota Fanning. Despite these complications, the script by returning screenwriter Richard Wank keeps things simple enough and repeats the plot revelations to make it easier on the audience. It's always clear who the bad guys are, men who are just as violent as MCL. Additionally, the screenplay manages to convey how McCall charms the townspeople without becoming cloying or overtly earnest. Washington holds the screen like the popular star he is. It's hard not to root for his characters. Even at the all-media screening, there was cheering when he taunted one of his enemies. And when the bad guys got what they deserve, beyond the righteous action and visceral violence, it's Washington's swagger and charisma that compels his face and voice, his distinctive walk, his trademark gestures, the smirk and pursed lips before he takes action are so recognizable and familiar that this journey through Italy feels like a visit with a benevolent but ruthless friend. This time, he even gets to speak Italian and show a different side of McCall. True to formula, the movie gives him a chance to mentor a younger person. This time, it's Fanning's spy. Their scenes together have a familial undertone, even if they are supposed to be strangers. The actors have worked together before, in 2004's Man on Fire, and Fanning brings out Washington's humorous side as their time together becomes a short respite from the fury elsewhere like its two predecessors. The Equalizer 3 demands a strong stomach. There's violence aplenty, loud bullets, body impalement, and maiming. Some of it is cruel, but draped in a veil of good intentions so earnest, its purpose is never questioned. There's even a well-staged Spartacus moment in the town square where everybody comes together to support McCall, making it easy to accept, even applaud, when the bad guys are sadistically dispatched. Fua orchestrates the action with propulsive style. Some of the visual motifs might be obvious, blood running into red wine, but it works. Collaborating with DP Robert Richardson, he takes advantage of the Italian setting to give the film a spacious feel. The creative team knows their ace in Washington, showing him off in dark and shadowy compositions as if he were an avenging angel from the heavens. Zarvo's music has two modes, threateningly ominous or loudly throbbing. It's all very effective, like so much of the film, delivering exactly what's expected. No more and no less. Washington tends to bow. Alternate between action movies and prestige Oscar projects, while this film and others like it might not win him awards or critical raves, they remain watchable and entertaining, aided in no small part by the directors in charge. Both Fuqua and the late Tony Scott, with whom Washington also made 5 films, are able to deliver well-made adrenaline jolts, and Washington never phones it in. He's always immensely present, knowing what his audience wants and giving it to them in true movie star fashion. Other information about this film. There's something about Denzel Washington as a righteous avenger of wrongs that just feels pleasingly natural. It's an archetype that he's perfected throughout his career. And in action movies like Man on Fire, The Magnificent Seven, and the first 2 entries in the Equalizer franchise, he's added complexity to heroes with flawed pasts paired once again with his Training Day director Antoine Fuqua. Washington finds yet more layers to unfurl with Robert McCall in this sequel. Even as the film itself at times struggles to be as compelling as its protagonist, Fug wastes no time in getting to the equalizing opening on the gory aftermath of an encounter between McCall and several unfortunate foes. The film begins with the Equalizer being caught off guard for maybe the first time ever. We see shock and doubt etched across McCall's face that Washington communicates all those emotions wordlessly, only makes the scene more potent from then on. The character's journey, this time around, becomes clear, whereas the first 2 Equalizer films were about McCall finding purpose for himself and others. This sequel is about whether salvation and peace are still achievable goals for a while. It looks like they are. As Fuqua and cinematographer Robert Richardson take in the beautiful sights of the small Italian town in which McCall finds a haven, so too does our hero absorb the culture through warm-hearted conversations with people in his adopted community. The other part of his life is never far away, though CIA agent Emma Collins' Dakota Fanning has tracked him down, unsure if McCall is friend or foe. Washington and Fanning still have that easy chemistry they showcased in Man on Fire, and it's fun to watch their back and forth gradually working towards something resembling trust. Frustratingly, McCall's adversaries aren't nearly as interesting to watch, too unprincipled to be intellectually stimulating, and with thinly drawn personalities. They're an unmemorable bunch who don't offer us anything that we haven't seen countless times before from villains in this genre. A bigger issue is that for all their depravity, there's never a sense that they actually offer much of a challenge for McCall. Nothing here hits the highs of the first Equalizer showdown at a home supplies depot, and the final face-off hits a bit of a flat note. Nonetheless, Washington still makes for an eminently watchable action star when he commits to taking an enemy down. It's quick, efficient, and brutal as ever. If this is the final time he puts on McCall's signature stopwatch, then so be it. But with any luck, there are more avenging heroes in his future. One thing about 2014's The Equalizer and its 2018 sequel, you knew exactly what you were going to get. Both were action thrillers built upon a fairly simple and straightforward premise, but they had a secret ingredient that made them stand out from the countless other movies of Their kind, Denzel Washington, the charismatic and infinity-talented Oscar-winning actor, brings a certain prestige and gravitas to every movie he appears in. The Equalizer films are no different. That includes Washington's latest Equalizer 3, the final film in director Antoine Fuqua's Hitman trilogy. To no surprise, Washington is great in reprising his role of Robert McCall, an aged yet still quite lethal hitman looking to put his violent past behind him. Robert is a fascinating contradiction. On one hand, he's an efficient and effective killer who has plowed his trade with brutal precision. On the other hand, there's a nobility to Robert that you might think clashes with his profession. There's a righteousness in the sympathy and compassion he has for the persecuted and downtrodden. In both facets of his character, Washington is as convincing as ever, showing a fierce and often frightening intensity in the action scenes and a genuine warmth and humanity in others as a movie. The Equalizer 3 features that same kind of duality. It's as much of a patient character study as it is a hardcore action movie, which may throw some people off, but for me that was one of its strengths. But don't worry, it still has the gritty, brutal violence fans of the previous films expect, and it wastes no time tossing some our way. The film opens with Washington's Robert McCall carrying out a job in Italy. He eliminates, in his own special way, a notorious mobster who has been distributing synthetic amphetamines out of his Sicilian vineyard. The drugs has been used to fund terrorist activities all across the globe. But Robert is seriously wounded and eventually passes out while driving. Away from the scene, he's found and rescued by a benevolent local doctor named Enzo Rimogaran. Robert wakes up in the small coastal town of Altunti, where he begins his recovery under Enzo's care. Over time, Robert finds himself falling for the quiet village and the friendly locals who call it home. But when the people he's grown to love are targeted by a powerful mob boss from Naples named Vincent Cor Andrea Scarduzio, Robert is forced to dust off the skills from his past in order to stand up for the townsfolk and their home. As Fuqua and screenwriter Richard Wank patiently let things play out, there's a side story of sorts involving a young and ambitious CIA agent, Emma Collins, Dakota Fanning, reaming with Washington for the first time since 2004's Man on Fire at First. Robert's interactions with her seem superfluous, but they end up leading to a satisfying conclusion despite its predictable framework. The Equalizer 3 works thanks to Washington's commitment to his character and the journey he takes, both physical and emotional. Washington never overplays a scene, and he makes you believe in every interesting layer he peels back. Meanwhile, Fuga's direction is spot on, and he wisely leans on the talents of his lead actor, yet he's crafty in how he approaches the action, shooting Washington in a way that hides any limitations the 68-year-old actor may have. Fuqua also makes great use of the scenic Amalfi Coast, sprinkling in some gorgeous shots and giving the area, especially Altunta, some real personality. Everything combines to make for an entertaining final chapter in the Equalizer series. It can't quite shake the feeling of predictability, and much of the story plays out exactly as we expect it to. But the strength of Denzel Washington's screen presence can't be overstated. He offers his character a worthwhile send-off while giving fans of the previous films the satisfying farewell they'll be looking for. The Equalizer 3 opens today exclusively in theaters. More detail. It's been some time since I've done a movie review. 6 months. In fact, that's not through lack of trying. I did live through the whole Barbenheimer craze just like you did, dear reader. In fact, I saw one of those 2 movies that sent everyone into a frenzy a few months ago. I'll bet you can't guess which one that's right. I saw Barbie. I could parse it out and say, my dear mother and her friends dragged me, a grown man, to the cinema to see it. But I doubt you'd believe that you want my thoughts on it. It wasn't great, maybe 3 out of 10. It seemed like some more extreme views of inclusivity, which actually aren't inclusive at all anyway. A set of modern films I really love are the Equalizer movies, starring Denzel Washington, Training Day, Man on Fire, the Films are based on a TV series from the 80s of the same name and follow Robert McCall, a retired U.S. Marine DIA Defense Intelligence Agency operative from Boston, Massachusetts, as he slowly but violently rights the wrongs of our world. The first film from 2014 is an absolute standout action movie, but its format differs from the norm. Traditional action movies have big, beefy blow and hard women running around, beating the crap out of endless waves of baddies and tossing out one-liners as one does when having an argument in their head. The Equalizer differed from these, offering up a quiet story about a retired man trying to find peace in this world, a retired man who just so happened to know how to kill a room full of people in the most gruesome ways. Court crews, nail guns, anything, and it builds to one hell of a showdown at the end. I don't remember much of the second movie. It's been a while since I saw it, but I do remember saying to myself, it wasn't as good as the first one, although as the bar was set very high, The Equalizer 2 was still a great film in the grand scheme of things. So, where does that leave us with this one? Is this The Equalizer 3, the traditional Hollywood difficult third act? Well, no, it's not. It's pretty much everything I'd hoped for. The film starts in Sicily, Italy, and in fact is nearly solely based in Italy, with a few shots and some final scenes in the USA. We follow a man gang. Enforcer Lorenzo Vitali, Bruno Bullata, roam Spider-Man Far From Home, and his young son driving in their Land Rover Defender through some gorgeous Italian scenery and back to their home, which, judging by the bodies and general carnage lying around, appears to have been ransacked. The camera follows Lorenzo and one terrified bodyguard through the house, which has been turned into a war zone. For those familiar with the way Equalizer movies work, it was clear the man we've been introduced to has been up to no good. And when the camera shows McCall being held at gunpoint in the wine cellar, it's clear what's about to happen in true fashion. Our now confirmed baddie Lorenzo is given a choice to do the right thing or face the consequences. Naturally, indecision kicks in, and a moment later, McCall springs to life, keeping his promise and effortlessly taking down at least 3 armed men despite being sat on a chair at gunpoint a moment earlier. Yeah, the action scenes in Equalizer movies aren't drawn-out gun battles using seemingly endless amounts of ammunition. They're very tight and over in a flash, leaving you almost in awe of what just happened. It also gives a sense of realism when I was training in Taekwondo in set sparring. I was trying to do short, quick things that might theoretically catch someone off guard. Can't say I was good, but the thought was there. Anyway, it was nice to see some action within the first 10 minutes of The Equalizer 3 at this point. We're all familiar with McCall's internal thought processes, and anyone who hasn't seen these films is in for a surprise. He doesn't really come across as an unwilling hero who's desperately trying not to get involved in any of it. He has a conscience, and it's clear that when he's put his mind to something, he's going to see it through to the end. Lots of complaints about Hollywood movies these days stem from the apparent weakening of our classic heroes, so new and often irritating leads can be set up to take over the Equalizer 3 seems at some point to be leaning this way, but it then reels away from it. Most movies seem to make a scene about the main character morphing into a drunken or depressed person off-screen. McCall in the film gets shot right in front of us by the son who was left in the car outside, which leads into the next part of the film. Now, one might see this and say, how can a former Marine get fooled by a kid? But it's important to remember, these films do great work depicting McCall's conscience, so it seems at least somewhat realistic. After bleeding out on a coastal road somewhere on the mainland, McCall wakes up in a traditional-looking Italian homestead belonging to the town's Dr. Enzo Aricio, portrayed by Remo Guerin, killing Yves LeMans 66, having been rescued by the town's carabinieri officer, played by Eugenio Master, Andrea ACAB from scratch. The village in question is the fictional town of Altunti, with filming of it taking place up and down Italy's Amalfi coast. The town seems pleasant, but for some reason the film seemed to use a strange filter for a lot of the scenes, making the colors a bit washed out. Anyone else who's been to this part of the world will agree that it's one of the most beautiful places on our planet. So, why they knocked the color out of some of it, I have no idea. A series of scenes show McCall recovering and getting acclimated to La Dolce Vita. The film doesn't feel like it's stagnating here as we begin to see the local members of the Camorra, a criminal organization originating from 17th century Naples, similar to a mafia, harass villagers and small businesses to drive them out and set up commercial operations, with the film barely hinting that the ever-observant McCall has noticed it too. The local fishmonger shop is firebombed, and when the carabiner that saved Michele Gio Benucci reports to central authorities, he's quickly targeted by the Camorra, first in his home and then in a local restaurant, which McCall frequents. The leader of this local faction is a nasty piece of work. Called Marco Quaranta Andrea Dodo, Thou Shalt Not Hate the Good Mothers, who is the brother to the head of the Camorra. The confrontation between Marco and Benucci quickly shifts to a confrontation between Marco and McCall, who requests them to move their business from the town, as he's grown attached to it. When Marco refuses, he's humiliated in front of his men and the locals. Afterwards, Marco and his goons plan what to do about McCall, deciding that killing him is the best option. McCall, a demonstrated fan of ambush attacks throughout the movies, is a few steps ahead and kills all of them, including Marco in brutal ways, leaving the bodies for the villagers to see. I should mention at this point there's a side plot involving a few agents from the CIA, including Agent Emma Collins, Dakota Fanning, the Twilight Saga Coraline. She gets an anonymous tip-off from McCall about Lorenzo Vitali's drug stash, which the CIA was unaware of and pursues. McCall, until they meet up in Altunti, it's hard to say what they're doing for most of the film other than driving around quickly or determinately, making a secret phone call. Collins nearly gets blown up by a car bomb at one point after trying to intimidate the head of the police in Naples, who works for the Camorra, Marco's older brother Vincent. Quaranta, played by Andrea Scardusio Meducci. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is determined to find out who killed his brother, going as far as threatening to kill Benucci in front of everyone in Altunti before McCall steps in. No fighting showdowns here, though, as the locals start streaming the events onto social media, forcing the Camorra to retreat before the presumably non-corrupt police arrive. The actual showdown happens in Vincent's home later. That night, McCall infiltrates and executes the bodyguards in fantastically brutal fashion. A small battle between McCall and Vincent ensues, but Vincent isn't trained in fighting, so it's over. Disappointingly quickly, McCall makes Vincent overdose on the drugs he was selling, and Vincent dies in the streets outside his home in front of everyone. The kind of poetic justice that these movies often deliver at the end, Muckle hands his little black book of tricks to. Collins, who is revealed to be the daughter of McCall's handler Susan Plamer from the first film, Susan featured in The Equalizer as a past connection who McCall values. She even gives McCall her blessing to be who the world needs him to be in the first film. Although she's passed away by the third film, it's clear McCall still cares. It's also revealed at the end that while McCall spent most of the film acting on his natural urge to defend those in need and the town he had come to love, the reason he was in Italy tracking down Lorenzo Vitali at the beginning was because Lorenzo's group had stolen money from a pension fund and a couple in Boston had lost everything. McCall took the exact amount in cash from Lorenzo's vault off-screen and returned it to the couple via Collins. McCall stays in the Altunti and celebrates with the town's folk as they've won a football match. Films like The Equalizer 3 show the strengths you can get when the same people who worked on the previous films return again with the same levels of enthusiasm, for the project director Antoine Fuqua brings the same balance of bombastic energy with slow-paced brooding. It's not necessarily a feel-good film, but when a scene is a happy one, it's not out of place, and it makes you feel it too contrarily when it gets dark. It's dark, and Washington once again shines as McCall. For this, McCall speaks and acts with a brutal honesty when he says he's going to do something. It's not a threat, it's a promise, and you feel it. Richard Wenk, who wrote The Expendables 2, the mechanic in the previous two Equalizer movies, to name a few, brings it full circle as well, while leaving things just open enough to squeeze in a fourth one if desired. I also appreciate that the film didn't lean into the Hollywood tropes of retired main characters who are losers now just begging for a young upstart to come along and carry the franchise there. Were moments where I thought they were trying to set up Collins as the next Equalizer, but I don't think it's going to happen. Washington might be approaching his 70s within the next few years, but the fact he's clearly eager to play McCall speaks volumes. Apart from the things I've mentioned about the color filter, the CIA plotline feeling a bit disconnected, and the lack of a real showdown at the end, I thought this was a great film and a step up from the previous one. I think this one might be circulating out of cinemas now, but if not, definitely get along and see it. And add it to your streaming collection alongside the other two Equalizer films because it's worth it. The Equalizer 3 is being advertised as the conclusion of a trilogy, although it's really just a more of the same sequel, which can be a good thing for those who enjoyed the first two installments. Director Antoine Fuqua and star Denzel Washington have adhered to the formula, which is partly derived from the Tamer 8's TV show and partly influenced by the Death Wish movies, and avoided going far afield for this episode. And although there's nothing in the Equalizer 3 that would preclude additional installments, Washington's age 67 is probably the biggest impediment. Narratively, the Equalizer 3 runs into trouble by expanding the canvas to include a CIA operation, an international drug ring, and terrorism into what is or should be a pretty straightforward story about one man's quest to bring down a mafia family. All of this tangential material, including the introduction of Agent Emma Collins, Dakota Fanning, diffuses the main story. It's not well integrated and creates confusion. Additionally, the ending is an anticlimax with the villain who seems untouchable for much of the running time suddenly vulnerable. The inclusion of Collins is the most head-scratching element of the Equalizer 3, because her presence pays minimal dividends if one was to create a cut of the movie in which she was excluded. Nothing would be lost. Perhaps the filmmakers are eyeing Fanning as a possible replacement for Washington's Robert McCall for another sequel or a spin-off. Although it's nice to see Washington and Fanning reunited 19 years after Man on Fire, when Fanning was a precocious 10-year-old. That's not sufficient justification for her to be in this movie. The McCall-centric aspect of the Equalizer 3 focuses on the kind of story we have come to expect from this franchise, an apologetically violent apocalypse for bad guys at the hand of an unstoppable vigilante. As the title implies, McCall exists to provide ordinary people with an advocate when they are threatened by malignant forces of greater power and influence. His methods are often brutal, making him a rare breed in a world where violence has been neutered and normalized by the PG-13 rating. He has no compunction about killing bad guys. If they are, as one character suggests, a cancer he views removal as the most expedient cure early in the film while on a mission in Sicily. McCall makes a mistake and ends up with a bullet in the back taken to the small village of Altunta near Naples by a kindly policeman, Gio Bonucci. Eugenio Mastandrea McCall is saved from death by a good-hearted local doctor, Enzo Izio Remo, gone while recuperating from his injuries. McCall learns that Altunta is under the thumb of a mafia family headed by brothers Vincent Andrea Scarduccio and Marco Corrant Andrea Dodaro. Once healed, Meckel takes it upon himself to intervene. When mild manners fail to convince the Corrantes to leave the people of Altunta alone, McCall resorts to more forceful means. Meanwhile, evidence discovered by McCall and relied to the CIA via phone call results in a raid led by Agent Collins and her supervisor, Frank Conroy, David Denman. Since this relates to an aspect of Vincent Corps' operation, he puts out a hit on Collins. The Equalizer 3 is very much a pea in a pod with its predecessors, The Equalizer and The Equalizer 2, no fancy subtitles for these films. Faye directs in much the same manner, with a focus on dark local and little artistic touches in this one. There's some hefty religious iconography, livening up the visuals. The action sequences are straightforward and harsh. No John Wick flair or CGI necessary, although one would assume that Washington, due to his age, used a stunt double in some instances the lead. Character is steady and relentless, deeply empathetic toward those for whom he advocates and implacable toward their path. Enemies, the villains are as evil as Fuqua can present them to be. Scenery chewing encouraged, the formula has worked twice before producing modest box office successes, and there's no reason why it can't work again. The Equalizer 3 is the messiest of the three movies and the most narratively fractured, but it should still satisfy those who consider themselves to be fans. Extra information: I absolutely love the Equalizer movies. It seems no one is making straightforward action thrillers nowadays, other than Antoine Fuqua, who's become the greatest master of the genre since the late Tony Scott. His movies are taught efficient and packed with gruesome R-rated action. They know precisely what they are, and if this is the final Equalizer film, it perfectly closes out the only big screen trilogy of Denzel Washington's career. Robert McCall is a perfect character for Denzel. At 70 years old, Washington has the right mix of righteous anger, worldliness, and kindness to do the character justice. One thing I always loved about the franchise was how faithful it was to the concept of the original TV show, being that McCall was a man doing penance for a lifetime of violence by trying to help those in need. Granted, his help usually involves yet more violence, but McCall always gives his adversaries a chance to do the right thing and back off, and those he kills really have it coming, making him a righteous avenger. The Equalizer 3 is leaner than the other movies in the franchise in that this is a more focused mission than the ones we saw in the first two movies. It runs only about 100 minutes compared to the other two, which were over 2 hours each. The movie begins with McCall massacring a faction of the mafia because they took something that didn't belong to them. We don't actually find out why he was in Sicily in the first place until the end of the movie, but given what we know about McCall from the other movies, namely that he'll do whatever it takes to help someone in need, it puts a perfect bow on the franchise. One of the best things about the series is how Washington can convey a lot about McCall's backstory without spelling it out. He's sophisticated and worldly, but he's also a guy that genuinely likes people. He's approachable and friendly, so it makes sense that he would quickly become part of the fabric of the Italian community he finds himself recovering. In part of the joy of Fuqua's film is watching McCall ingratiate himself with the movie, taking time to embellish the friendly rapport he builds with a local doctor, Remo Garon, the local constable, Eugenio Mast, and a friendly bistro owner, Guy Escato. Meanwhile, the movie also offers us a man-on-fire reunion with Dakota Fanning as a CIA analyst. McCall plucks out of a menial role to give her a scoop on a prominent terror funding operation involving the Mafia Fanning. And Washington still have great chemistry with her, once again playing a pseudo-daughter figure. However, their relationship has an interesting balance, now that she's an adult, with her own motivations. Fuck has always done a skillful job balancing character beats and carnage in his Equalizer films, and he certainly doesn't skimp on violence. Indeed, this is likely the most gruesome of the series to date, with McCall dispatching his opponents in ways that make him almost more of a slasher than an action hero. I feel like McCall could go up against Jason or Freddy Krueger at this point and come out on top as far as gore and kill counts go. Once again, Washington's McCall goes for speed and efficiency, using whatever weapon he has handy. Notably, he only rarely uses a gun. If he shoots someone, usually it's only after he's used the barrel to impale someone through their ocular cavity, allowing him to use their skull as an improvised silencer. This actually happens in the movie. This is hard. our material, and it's nice to see Fuqua and Washington are still on board with making their movies as lean and mean as possible. If I have any issues with the Equalizer 3, it's that once again, the movie's villains are generic, that a random mafioso, Andrea Scarduccio's Vincent, isn't going to pose much of a threat to McCall. And it would have been great to see Denzel go up against another icon in a final battle royale. Alas, it was not to be. Even still, the Equalizer 3 delivers just as much of a bang as the other movies in the series, and it's pretty kick-ass entertainment. It is clearly the year of action thrillers, and iconic sequels in Hollywood. Celebrated movie stars are showing why they are who they are in the business for so long. Their longevity has been a highlight this year, while Tom Cruise is in no mood to stop, as Ethan Hunt, Denzel Washington's terrific screen presence, makes his final run as the Equalizer, a thrilling watch. It is entertaining if not innovative. Director Antoine Fuqua, who has collaborated with Denzel in the previous two movies and a few others, knows how to best utilize the actor's restraint and turmoil, even as the script sticks to familiar territory. It is the actor who captures your intrigue and attention, set in Lords when he discovers his friends are under their control. Still a mysterious figure in all black, he uses his superheroic combat skills to protect the people and his adopted town at all costs. The film also sees him reunite with Dakota Fanning after 2 decades. Fuqua pits Denzel against the local mafia in a brutal action thriller that ups the violence and retains the underlying sense of belonging and justice, despite maintaining the pulse of the previous 2 movies. You don't feel fatigued by the action and extreme violence as it reaches its final leg. Unnerving musical score by Marcelo Zarvos sets the mood for a taut action thriller that isn't devoid of a heart. The central character is way more layered than before, as focus even shifts to mental health, age, and guilt that follows the violence. There's also a twist in the end and a terrific opening sequence. This film, directed by Antoine Fuqua, written by Richard Wank, produced by Todd Black, Jason Blumenthal, Denzel Washington, Antoine Fuqua, Steve Tisch, Clayton Townsend, Alex Siskin, Tony Eldridge, starring Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning, David Denman. Cinematography, Robert Richardson, edited by Conrad Buff, music by Marcelo Zarvos. Production companies: Columbia Pictures, Eagle Pictures, Escape Artists, Ziv Productions, distributed by Sony Pictures, releasing release dates August 28, 2023 in Rome, September 1st, 2023 in United States, running time minutes, country, United States, languages, English. Detailed review of the film, The Equalizer 3, and some interesting facts about this film. Hope you like this video. Do give our video a like and subscribe West Films to our channel to watch videos. Thanks for watching.